Today, let's take a look at solving proportions. We're going to look at two different methods. One is probably more common than the other, but both are applicable to what we've been learning. Proportion is an equation that states that two ratios are equal. If a quantity in a proportion is unknown, we can solve it by one of two ways. One is using that multiplication property of equality, which we've talked about before when solving equations at the beginning of this chapter, or we could use cross products. And cross products is probably the more common of the two methods, but we're going to investigate both. I'm actually going to come back to this little assignment here. We might do it either on Friday when oh no, we don't meet on Friday. Maybe we'll do it in a breakout room. You can work with a small group to see how you could solve that problem. So let's first look at solving a proportion using the multiplication property of equality. What is the solution of the proportion 7 to 8 is equal to m to 12? Well, using that multiplication property of equality, we're going to multiply both sides by 12. That's going to eliminate the 12 on this side, which gives me m, which my goal was to solve for m. And then I'm left with 12 times 7/8. And again, I'm going to simplify this. I'm going to divide them both by 4, cross cancel. So I get m is equal to 21 over 2, which is 10.5, or 10 1/2. Okay, so that's one way that we can do a problem, is by using our multiplication property of equality. Let's try a second one like that. And again, we did this with solving equations, so this is nothing new. If I look at this proportion, and remember, a proportion states that two ratios are equal. If I was asked to use the multiplication property of equality to isolate my variable, I'm going to multiply both sides by 7. It will cancel out on the left here, leaving me with x. Since I cannot simplify before I multiply, I'm going to have 28 over 5. I'm going to convert this to a decimal. That's what they've been looking for in these. All right, so that will be 5 times 5 is 25. And then we have 3 left, so that's 3/5, which is 6/10. Okay, so there we have an example or two of our multiplication property to solve a proportion. But now let's turn to the one that you're probably very familiar with, which is the cross products property of a proportion. The cross products of a proportion are equal, as I mentioned already, they're two ratios that are equivalent, and we'll know that to be a true proportion if we multiply the cross numbers, and if those numbers are equal, then we have a true proportion. So we're going to look at multiplying, and again, we'll look at multiplying the extremes and the means. A times D equals B times C, as long as B and D are not equal to 0, because if you recall, we cannot divide by 0. So we're going to multiply that 3 times 12, and that will give me a 36. And I'm going to multiply the 4 times 9 to give me also 36. So we see that forms a true proportion. If those numbers were not equal, then it would not be a proportion. Let's solve a couple. Again, if I wanted to use this cross products method, I'm going to multiply the extremes, the 4 and the x. That gives me 4 times x, which is 4x, and we'll multiply the 3 times the 8. Well, 3 times 8 is 24. We'll simplify, and we get x is equal to 6. That would complete that proportion and make it equivalent. One last problem. Let's take and cross multiply. 5 times y is 5y, and 3 times 3 is 9. I'm now left with dividing by 5. Again, I want to leave this in a decimal form. 5 will go in once, And then I have 4/5 left over, which is, as you know, 8/10. And there you have our two methods. You'll be asked to solve some using both methods in your assignment tonight.